So just another quick reminder before we begin. The opinions that are going to be expressed during the panel, so of the panelists and anyone else, they just reflect their own opinions and not of their institutions or the Federal Reserve Bank of Philadelphia or the Federal Reserve System. So to get started with the panel, I'll actually have the panelists introduce themselves briefly. I think that's probably the best thing to do. But I'll mention their names right now, but we have Joe Breeden from Deep Future Analytics, Helmut Katzgraber from 55 North Ventures, Yue Sun from JP Morgan, Danica Marsden from the Bank of Canada, Eric Geisels from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, and you already heard from Gushu, assistant professor at University of Pennsylvania. So since Gushu has already been introduced, maybe I'll move on and ask Joe to give a brief introduction, and then I'll call everyone else after that.
Thank you. Nice to meet you all. I'm Joe Breeden. I am president of Deep Future Analytics and volunteer as president of Model Risk Managers International Association. I originally got my PhD in physics studying chaos theory and astrophysics, which is not exactly quantum computing, but have had the opportunity to do some research in this area. So look forward to discussing.
Thank you. Helmut?
Hi, everybody. My name is Helmut Katzgraber. I have a pretty colorful life. So I used to be a university professor in theoretical and computational physics, first at ETH in Zurich, then at Texas A&M University, and spent better time of my life benchmarking quantum devices. Spent then 2 years at Microsoft, followed by 5 years at Amazon. And in particular at Amazon, we worked very closely with banking institutions like JP Morgan Chase, Goldman Sachs, Fidelity, Citibank, looking for potential applications for quantum devices. And the reason that, this was probably not a detail on the invite is that as of last week, Thursday, I'm Chief Science Officer of 55 North. It's the largest VC fund solely focused on quantum technologies out of Denmark. So nice to meet you all.
Thank you. Danica?
Hello, everyone. Danica Marsden. I have a background in experimental physics. I worked for a couple of quantum computing startups building quantum computers. And then about 4 years ago, I joined the Central Bank of Canada, looking at both advising on the cybersecurity side of things with respect to quantum computing, but also looking at applying quantum computing to the problems within economic modeling and operations of central banking as well as financial institutions.
Thank you. Eric?
Sorry, I was muted. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Eric Geisels. I'm a professor of economics and finance, and that's also my background. I'm an economist and a finance researcher. I focus on everything that is kind of under the umbrella of fintech, which includes AI, blockchain, and last but not least, and most importantly for this panel, quantum computing. I've done research on pretty much different sort of a wide range of issues that people encounter in the financial industry, whether it's pricing of derivatives, whether it's portfolio optimization, but also kind of deeper issues such as notions of ambiguity and model uncertainty and how quantum can help us understand these things.
Thank you, Eric. Yue?
Thank you, Fabio. Thank you for the opportunity to participate in today's panel. And hello, everyone. My name is Yue Sun, and I'm part of the Global Technology Applied Research team at JP Morgan Chase. And at this Global Technology Applied Research, we explore the intersection of the emerging technologies and financial applications. And my work specifically focuses on quantum computing, and especially how quantum algorithms and hardware may help solve complex computational challenges in finance. And I'm very honored and excited to be here today, and look forward to learning from everyone's perspective. Thank you.
Thank you. And Gushu, just in case some people joined just for this portion and missed your earlier introduction, feel free to introduce yourself one more time. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm Gushu Li. I'm a faculty member in the Department of Computer Information Science at the University of Pennsylvania. And I have been working on quantum computing in the last 8 years. I work on quantum programming, compiler, hardware architecture, QC code design, and this kind of things. And very nice to be here. Thank you.
Okay, great. So now we can get started. Thank you again to all the panelists for being a part of the panel. I look forward to the discussion. I thought that we'd get started maybe with some either short or poll questions. These are, they're short, and so there's not going to be really a great way to they're mostly hypothetical. I mean, they're kind of let's call them icebreaker questions. So, with all the caveats that it's usually hard to predict what's going to happen. Maybe I'll just start asking when based on kind of your opinion and experience of the technology, when do you think there will be some quantum advantage for a commercial problem? So, Gushu already mentioned the supremacy experiment from Google. That was back in 2019. We've seen repeats of that experiment from other companies more recently, as well as related experiments. But I think everyone can agree that we haven't seen a commercial problem yet. So I'll just poll people, and I think people can raise their hands. The options will be 0 to 2 years, 2 to 5 years, 5 to 10 years, or 10 plus years. And then so I'll call it out, and then please just raise your hand when you think that will be. Well, I mean, I think again, this is just a guess, and no one really knows. So anyone will say zero. Will anyone say 0 to 2? Okay. 2 to 5. 5 to 10. Okay.
I mean,
Okay,
not
maybe-
impossible.
Yeah, maybe.
So I would say 7 to 10.
Seven.
That's what I would go for.
7 to 10. Okay, and then 10 plus. Anyone is kind of focusing on the 10 plus? Okay. Thanks. And then the next one is if you could describe, it doesn't have to be one word or one sentence, but it's short in a short amount of time. What you personally think the biggest bottleneck for quantum computing is? Maybe I'll call people out. I'll start with Helmut this time.
So I think the biggest bottlenecks right now are definitely in packaging from a purely computing standpoint. The use of chiplets, modern packaging technologies are needed. Low control electronics, very important. Right now you have basically a wire coming out of the cryostat per qubit, and obviously that's not going to scale. But more importantly, also error correction. The original error correction schemes, for example, what Google is using, scale horribly in the number of qubits. And now more recently, companies like IBM have come up with very clever ideas of, reducing a quadratic overhead to something that is quasi-linear, more or less. So I think those are the biggest bottlenecks right now.
Thank you. Danica?
Yeah, I'd add that from a hardware perspective, there's a fundamental conflict between the isolation needed to keep a quantum system behaving quantumly and the lack of isolation required to be able to control and read out the same quantum system. And then from an algorithmic point of view, I think there are sort of few places where we're confident that we might be able to harness an advantage for problems that aren't chemistry or physics related in the future.
Yeah, thank you. Eric?
Yeah, I would actually also go with error correction. I think that's the sort of when we can sort of crack the problem of error correction, I think that will be a major advance that will then allow us to move to the commercial applications, but we're not there.
Yeah, great. Yue? I think you're still muted. Sorry.
Sorry. I think I double clicked the button. So yeah, I generally agree that the biggest bottleneck seems to be on the hardware side, and especially the scaling up of the quantum hardware while maintaining the low error rates, and also without introducing too much of an overhead that's making the cycles too slow.
Okay. Gushu?
Yes, I generally also agree that the bottleneck is maybe more toward the hardware side. Like we can have very good qubits when there's just very few of them, but when things goes to scale up, a lot of challenges emerges. Like how do we really maintain coherence control of everything, and how to prevent from interfere with each other, and how to really develop a scalable architecture with maybe you need multiple modules to be able to be connected together, and things like that. And in addition to hardware, I also want to bring up the thing that there are a couple of domains we believe quantum computers can help, but we still need a killer application to be the first practical application where quantum can show. But I don't think we are very clear about which problem instance that can be at this moment, and also how to certify that if we have an advantage, a quantum program can beat classical program, how can we show that the computation of a quantum computer is correct is also a problem, because we don't have a classical validation now.
Yeah. I mean, so I agree very much on the algorithm. I mean, obviously, I think that most of the answers are on the hardware side, which is very true because we can't really test things out. But yeah, to your point that we don't have great candidates even for software. But yeah, we'll discuss deeper in a second, and then I'll get Joe's answer to this question as well. I think you're
sorry. I'll cede my time. I think it's been said. I don't have any new insights here. I agree.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, the last one, and then we'll move on to deeper questions. What's the biggest misconception about quantum computing? I'll start with Danica this time then.
That it's just going to be faster, strictly faster on certain problems. I think that there's sometimes in the general public a lack of understanding of the fundamental difference in how a quantum computer operates and what that means for the kinds of problems that it will enable.
Yeah. Eric?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much the same thing. Is that when you talk to people sort of who are not too familiar with, they have this idea that a quantum computer is just a juiced up version of a classical computer and will do everything much faster than a classical computer will. And that's a misconception. That people don't really understand that it's a paradigm shift, but also that quantum computers are terrible at solving certain problems that classical computers can solve easily. And so that the future is one of hybrid solutions where we kind of integrate both classical and quantum hardware. But that's not something that, so the misconception is that this sort of quantum is going to solve everything much faster or whatever it is. That's a misconception.
Yeah. Yue, thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with that one. That it's quantum computers. It's not going to be universally outperform classical computers across all tasks, but also additionally, there's another I think a common misconception is that a quantum computer is just doing massive parallelization to solve problems, which is also not true.
Yeah, I think that's a very common one. Gushu, any thoughts?
Yes, I think I don't have more to add as here. All of my thoughts has been mentioned.
Joe?
Same. I agree.
Okay. Helmut?
I think everything has been said that I was going to say, but another one is that, applications are here and now. There's too much press going around that suggests that this might be the case, and it's absolutely not the case.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that's a good transition maybe to kind of start our kind of deeper discussion. So the panel is going to be kind of most roughly divided into 3 sections. We're going to dive a little bit more on the current state of quantum computing and like anticipated developments. And I won't have everyone answer every question now, but of course, at any point, if you want to chime in, please chime in, especially if you want to disagree. But I'll start with Yue asking what milestones must be true before quantum computers become useful, especially considering the applications for banking and finance.
Right, thank you. So I think there are a few big milestones that need to happen before quantum machines become truly useful for banking and finance. And firstly, I think that this is the point that I mentioned before. We need to see quantum error correction to work at scale. That means that we need hundreds or even thousands of reliable qubits that can run calculations quickly and accurately. And also the hardware itself has to improve with enough qubits and long enough coherence time to handle complex financial tasks. And on the algorithm side, we also need more robust quantum algorithms that are specifically designed for financial problems, not just for general science. And finally, I think it's also important to make sure that the quantum systems can seamlessly integrate with today's IT infrastructure that the banks already use. This is further down the future, but this is something that's also an important milestone. And I think hitting these milestones will help move quantum computing from the lab into real-world financial applications.
Danica, what are your thoughts on the same question? So what milestones do you think need to happen?
Well, the only thing I would add a little bit to that is particularly within that infrastructure piece, that for financial institutions which are transacting using highly sensitive, highly protected data, we're going to want something like blind quantum computing or quantum homomorphic encryption in place so that the banks are able to send that protected data to the quantum resources in the cloud and back to do the calculation without ever exposing that highly sensitive data.
And what progress have you seen on that front? I mean, I personally, there's very little that I hear talking about. I mean, people have talked about it, like
it's very much in research, yeah.
Yeah,
it's very much in research mode. Mm-hmm.
And Helmut, any thoughts on the same question as well?
All right, so a lot of time has passed and I was listening to everybody. Can you remind me of the question?
Yeah, sorry. It's essentially what milestones must be true before quantum computers become useful, especially in banking and finance.
So I think I'd like to take a quick step back and say that there's three main things that you can do with quantum and some other things as well. One is sensing, one of it is networking, and one of it is computing. Mm-hmm. And they're very distinct applications. Now, if I just focus on computing, we're currently in a noisy intermediate scale era, meaning that these devices make an error relatively regularly. So imagine if your laptop would basically flip a bit every 1,000 operations, it would be completely useless. And so what we need to do is lower the error rates. In other words, improve the manufacturing and the methods how we control and manipulate these qubits so that the individual qubit fidelities are higher. The other thing that we need to do is think about, how we can implement good error correction schemes so that we have logical qubits. I think that's a very important milestone before we can do anything useful. When it comes to QKD, it's definitely something that might be of interest and might work. The problem is that right now we need quantum repeaters for the simple reason that we cannot entangle over standard fiber over, say, 500 miles or so very easily. And so there's still a lot of work being done in that area. Having said that, I can at least tell you one experiment we did when I was back at Amazon with Fidelity, where we actually built a QKD network between our data center and Fidelity's Center for Applied Technologies to demonstrate that it's actually possible. But I think for every type of computer, and I'm not mentioning sensing because it's relevant here, we need to go from this was built together with a little bit of hay, sticks, some clay, and Scotch tape to an actual commoditized product. Something that is not being made in a lab, but something that is being made in a factory. And I think that's probably the most important development that has to happen here.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point. I guess I'll ask a brief follow-up to that. I mean, there is a little bit of a tension of like, once you're making it in a factory, like typically, the R&D maybe slows down because you're hoping to like kind of get scale and therefore you're like improving yields and whatnot. But like I feel like quantum computing is still, I mean, quantum computing will obviously improve a lot from like having higher yields on the chips on everything, frankly. But at the same time, even architectures are, I mean, they're mostly like, yeah, some companies kind of focus on the same ones, but we don't really know what's going to be kind of the first architectures to deliver value. So like kind of how would you like how would you balance those two things?
I mean, it's of course an important question, and when you look at companies like IBM, they're basically at this transition from we build stuff in a lab to we're building an enterprise scale type product, with their new IBM System 2, for example. Mm-hmm. Having said that, I mean, these are big tech companies that have very deep pockets, and startups are still a little bit more in the early days. So it will take some time, but I think that, without making it into a scaling issue, because going from 0 to 1 is much harder than going from 1 to 100, infusing scientists with a bit more of a product mindset would be definitely help the whole community. I think that's one of the things. That's basically what I was trying to say. Having said that, one thing that I find surprising now that I'm talking to startups is that progress is accelerating. I would have never believed this, but a lot of startups are delivering ahead of their promised milestones. Now, usually it's the other way around, but sorry, my cuckoo is going off. But I see a shift here, and that's actually a good shift.
Yeah, so actually that's actually literally my next question. So I think it's a good segue. I'll just pause for a second if anyone else wants to chime in. But otherwise, to your point, my next question is actually, is hardware progress accelerating, steady, or slowing? I think it's hard if you're just if you're not in the community, like looking at all the releases, it's hard to really gauge that. And then as a follow-up, what developments make you say so? You've kind of given your opinion, so I'll actually shift over to Gushue to give his thoughts on this question.
Great, thank you. Yeah. So for this question, I would give this answer. Okay, there are a couple of fast, couple of slow, and there's like no single, like there are many aspects regarding hardware, and I will talk about like them, try to like mention as many as possible. So in terms of some aspects, for example, the physical error rate of individual gates, the improvement is getting slower. So that is kind of understandable. Like 20 years ago, like all our gates are very bad. And the people trying to continue to improve the fidelity of each gate from like over 90s and over 95, over 99%, 99.9%, like keep adding nines. But now there's a physical limit that we can achieve. For example, on superconducting, it's especially I see IBM's like theoretical paper, like the theoretical like error rate of a single like CNOT gate is like 10 to the power of -4. It's very hard to like go below that unless you have completely new qubit designs. So that is like kind of slow, just kind of slower and slower, just like more slower. Like, and I believe this is also like similar for other platforms. There's a physical limit out there. You cannot do very like you cannot like arbitrarily improve your gate fidelity. But there are also like something I think we are happy to see that things are getting faster. For example, especially in the last 5 to 10 years, like the number of qubits is growing from like 2 to 5 qubits to now I think IBM have like a qubit system of like chips of 1,000 qubits. I think there's still a lot of things need to do. Like how do we do control over like 1,000 qubit? How do we do calibration onto 1,000 qubits? It's still a problem. I don't think they are able to really use 1,000 qubits coherently on their chip yet, but at least they have the qubit out there. So that's something faster. And also, I think the error correction, recent error correction experiment demonstration is also faster than I expected, like especially in the last 2 years. There are a bunch of questions, a bunch of error correction experiments from like surface code, Google's Willow, and also Quantinuum has a bunch of error correction code experiments on different aspects. QERA demonstrates some error correction. They are not that kind of like a fully protected error correction yet, but we are definitely go beyond, like encoding more like a fiddle qubit into one logic qubit, and this logic qubit is not yet logical, but already much better than a bare physical qubit. So that is something faster than I expected. In the future, I'm expecting we need improvements, especially hardware improvements on the scalability side. Like, for example, how do we really did the control interrupter? I think as Helmut just mentioned, there's no way we can connect like 1,000 cables to a refrigerator. We need either, for example, low temperature cryogenic control, or like a fridge to fridge entanglement, or maybe multiple shifting of fridge to the entanglement, and with like a classical control in the 77 K top level. I don't think we have a clear roadmap for that, but that's something we hardware need to make progress for.
Yeah, I guess there's actually. Oh, go ahead, Helmut.
I just wanted to add one comment that I realized I forgot. You did mention one thing earlier, which is, we have different qubit modalities. We can make these devices out of different approaches. Personally, I don't think there's going to be in the medium term a particular modality that will reign supreme in that sense, because some qubits like ions, for example, are very high fidelity but relatively slow. Superconducting are very fast, but there's fabrication issues. And so depending on what type of algorithm you want to run, you might as well choose the right type of hardware.
And to your point about different modalities and related to this question, do you think that the progress, like, are you, you've been surprised on like let's say ahead of schedule delivery on hardware progress at least? Do you think that the progress that ahead of schedule applies across modalities? Maybe not every modality, but
definitely not every modality. I should mince my words carefully, but if you look at topological qubits, we have here promises for the last 15, 20 years, and to date there is not a single qubit.
Yeah.
Whereas neutral atoms is something that came up quickly, and then Misha Lukin and QERA just went bang, and here's the machine. So you have it depends really how hard the engineering problem is, and I think that's the bigger challenge down the road.
Yeah, makes sense. Thank you. Does anyone else want to chime in here? In that case, so there's quite a few questions also coming from the audience. I'll briefly ask. It's related to progress, but I'll start with Joe asking what the most overhyped claim about quantum computing. What is the most overhyped claim that you've heard about quantum computing?
Well, I should clarify. I think the reason I'm here is being focused on specific applications, and my career is working in lending. So I think there may be more immediate applications on the trading desk, some of the things I've heard being done there. On the lending side, most of the things I've heard relate to quantum versions of machine learning algorithms. Is there a quantum acceleration of creating a stochastic gradient boosted tree or a neural net? And maybe there are, but that's where the hype comes in. It's like, what's the business case for that? Again, on the lending side, if I have to build a score, I work at a bank, I'm an analyst, and maybe I build a few models a year, I don't really care if it's going to be 50% or even 3 times faster than what I normally do, because I'm not doing it very often. So I think the kind of problems we've looked at so far have to be more operational, have to be where it really matters, the volume you have to do and the speed of an answer. So that's why I started looking more at the point of underwriting when we're making decisions, where we make millions of them. as opposed to one-off things, which the current algorithms have been looking at just because of who does the research, right? You get a data science looking at it. Anyway, I'd stop there.
Yeah. Anyone else want to chime in on this?
Yeah, maybe on overhype or
yeah. Well, on both. I mean, I'll definitely agree on the quantum machine learning aspect of overhyping, but I want to let Eric please go ahead. I'm kind
of taking this a little bit in a different direction. Currently, electricity consumption of U.S. data centers is about it's almost 6% of total electricity consumption. And it's kind of equivalent to almost half of a country like France or 2/3 of the UK. So these are sort of many people would argue that we're on an unsustainable path. And Sam Altman kind of is thinking about nuclear fusion as a solution to the sort of electricity-hungry data centers that we built for AI. Elon Musk wants to put data centers in space, and which has an abundance of solar power, and then sort of have the data being transferred back and forth to Earth with this satellites system. And the overhyped part is that I've heard arguments about quantum computing helping out on these serious challenges on powering U.S. data centers. But I'm not convinced. I don't think that's a very that's a good example of an overhyped argument about quantum computing. We can go into the details, but it's not. I think I just wanted to give that as an example.
No, thank you. I think it's great to have like a different angle from the over. Yeah, I agree with you. There's a lot of claims on like the energy consumption as well, but I think we don't really have enough evidence to confirm that that's the case. Helmut, did you want to say something as well?
I fully agree with what was said. I'm just going to latch on two media stories that were horrendously overhyped and did not deliver. If you go back a decade, you had a cover on Time magazine, The Infinity Machine, claiming that this D-Wave device, which is an analog optimization machine, could solve all kinds of problems. Reality has shown that anything that D-Wave can do, I can do on this laptop if I know how to properly program a particular algorithm. So that's one. And if we fast forward now 10 years to basically early this year, Microsoft's claims of Majorana 1, that was not even a chip. It was not even a fraction of a chip. It was just a component. And calling it a qubit is a lie that hopefully got regulators' attentions.
Yeah, I see. Thank you. Yeah, I think it's good to have specific examples because sometimes things get forgotten after a while. Any other thoughts?
Maybe I can piggyback. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah.
No, forget. I was just going to say that, I mean, it's such a nascent field. I mean, we're comparing a toddler to an Olympian, right? I mean, we have so far to go. And I'd say with the sort of algorithmic nuggets that have been developed so far, quantum Fourier transform and quantum amplitude estimation that are under the hood of some of the potential algorithmic promise that we see with quantum computers, I think probably in the future, more will be developed that we haven't even thought of yet. So is it hype? I don't know. I mean, hard to say.
I mean, definitely you want to, there's a balance between, trying to encourage optimism about the technology and like, the hype. I guess, you always want to make sure at least you're on the side of like the claims that you're making. I mean, to some of Helmut's explicit examples, like that if you're making a specific scientific claim that like you're solving something in a specific amount of time, then that's something that's verifiable. At least those are my thoughts, but I don't want to chime in here too much. I'll let you're also going to say something and then we can move on.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, it's exactly to the point that Danica just mentioned. We know that we have these algorithmic components. Those are very important. They have shown promises like the quantum amplitude estimation that's been mentioned, and also a few quantum optimization algorithms, including heuristic ones and the ones that are with the provable speedups. And also, I guess more recently, there's a Tensor PCA that's shown promising advantages in things like doing data analytics and so on. But we need to know that these are not actually solving the problems that are end-to-end in the financial context. And to actually take advantage of these algorithms, we will have to, again, just acting back to the one point that I mentioned before, tailor these algorithms to the particular financial use cases. So with that said, even with powerful hardware that's available in the future, we still need to develop end-to-end specialized algorithms that will utilize the structures, the real-world problems, and also take into account real-world data and constraints and so on. And that is a highly non-trivial work.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much. I think this is actually a good segue to move on, to your point about algorithms. The next section is kind of going to focus a little bit more on use cases, especially in banking and finance. There's some questions from the audience around this as well, specifically around milestones that need to be achieved. So it's related to one of our first questions. I'll move on, and I'll try to kind of incorporate some of the questions from the audience. But I'll actually start with Joe, because you specifically worked on one use case that you saw was important to your line of business. So you're welcome to kind of elaborate more around there. The broader question is essentially what types of computational problems that banks and financial institutions currently struggle with that a quantum computer may potentially be able to solve. We've already alluded to the fact that, of course, we need more, quantum algorithms still also need development. So, the truthful answer, I think, here is that we don't know the entire kind of categorization of every problem that will be solved by a quantum computer, but you can talk specifically about the use case you've worked on, and then chime in on what you've learned from there and maybe other areas that you think may be useful.
Yeah, thank you. Quickly, I'll say that when I looked at this, the question is, what are we not doing that we could or should be doing for lack of the computational ability to do so? And again, from the lending side, we have credit scores, we have financial calculations, things like that. None of those are the obstacle, but if you look at one of the main failures in lending, it's that everything I can mention in analytics is a point estimate. Someone has at origination, they give you a point score. There are a lot of point calculations. We're not considering the range of uncertainty distributions. And similarly, optimization of a portfolio of an account is also not very rich. It's not optimization at multiple points. And so these things that I think could have a big impact on the way we think about analyzing accounts and portfolios that we're not doing, could any of that be aided with a quantum computer? That was the starting question we had. Specifically, we looked at point of origination. Instead of just thinking of a score today, I've got a distribution of risk, and I've got the evolution of that through time, multiple steps of the economy, the maturing of the account. And with each of these, I've got competing risks of charging off and default. So we wanted to look at the distributions here. And of course, there is a quantum Monte Carlo algorithm. And what we wound up doing was to compare, if I was to do all these simulations classically, first of all, why aren't we doing this in loan origination? That's probably a second question, and I think we certainly should be. But is it fast enough, efficient enough? And again, I don't want to say quantum is just about speed, but is there a way to use it that would allow us to solve this problem? And so we did some hypothetical tests, and hypothetically one can do this, but it's not necessarily efficient with because of the competing risk aspect of our problem. You wind up needing a chain of qubits rather than kind of compute in place. So that's what we were looking at. In fact, as a side effect, we figured out a rather efficient way to do this classically. And so we wound up developing a classical Monte Carlo algorithm that could be implemented today. That our final answer was, yes, indeed, we should be doing at origination uncertainty calculations just like I described. They could be better, potentially with quantum, but this was just one use case exploration of what's the difference, what are the opportunities, and I feel like probably it'll be richer. Again, on the trading desk, there's probably problems that you can't solve in any practical time scale that you could with quantum. That's not my expertise, so I'd leave that to someone else. But that was my view on it.
Just as a follow-up, so what was there something? So obviously you mentioned point estimates versus being able to get like a richer distribution of outcomes. Was that the sole motivation? I guess the real question is like, what was it that made you choose this problem that like classical computing was like not? I mean, obviously, as a consequence of this, you found a better classical solution, which I anecdotally personally have found to be happen quite often when you're looking at quantum algorithms. But I wanted to just ask a follow-up if there was something specific about that problem you're looking at that made you think about quantum computing. As I think it's always useful, I think, to think about how people are thinking about finding use cases.
Yeah, it is about use of uncertainty at origination. If I said that Danica applies for a loan and she gets a 760 as a score, and I'm very certain of that, that's one thing. If Helmut applies and he also gets a 760, but is very uncertain, I should be considering that. But really, lending should be more than just even that point estimate and distribution. It's how will that evolve through time? What are the other uncertainties in my system? Because I really want to know at point of origination, what's my point estimate of yield, but what's the uncertainty of that? So I know, where am I certain of my yields? Where am I uncertain of my yields? And so if you ask, why aren't we doing this? We have all the models, we have the measures of uncertainty, we have every piece in this calculation, but nobody's doing it. For all their research, why isn't JP Morgan Chase doing this? And I think if you view it purely as, well, I've got to do a Monte Carlo simulation of all these distributions, there's no way I can do that at point of origination and make a reasonable decision, then it sets people off immediately as intractable, don't have time for it. It was at the end of this project then that we figured out, well, in fact, I can answer this with about 20 simulations because there are certain approximations that I can discover along the way. And at that point, yeah, we should be doing this. We could be making much more refined decisions, and it has real business value. So that's where I started from. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, that's great. I'm going to ask the same question to you. I think we would love to hear about your thoughts on computational problems for banks and financial institutions. And relatedly, one of the audience questions was for the 4 milestones that you mentioned, which one do you think is the most challenging one to achieve? And that was like scaling hardware, more robust algorithms, or integration with IT infrastructure. But you can answer one at a time or however you feel is best.
Sure. Maybe I'll answer the computational problems that are promising first, and then move to the milestones. So I think Joe gave a very good answer that's more tailored to specific use cases. But maybe I can take a step back and just to start from the higher level. I would say that any financial problem that if we want it to benefit from quantum computing, it's going to be likely something that's computationally challenging classically at this moment. Otherwise, this is something that's currently being solved very efficiently by classical methods, then it's probably not going to benefit very much from quantum computing because there's just a very little room for improvement. So with that said, I think there are problems that are current classical methods will encounter some scaling bottlenecks. For example, things like large-scale portfolio optimization problems, especially those ones with combinatorial and discrete variables, or with a highly non-convex structure, and those are the problems that classical methods just struggle due to the many variables and also the complex constraints. And also another one may be risk analysis that involves a very high dimensional aggregation of non-convex risk matrix. This would also make it very hard for the classical methods to scale, because it's going to aggregate and model the risks across thousands of scenarios and factors. It's just something that's very slow and resource intensive with classical approaches. And I would also like to add that there are also things that currently, because of the constraints of the classical compute capability, it's beyond our current imagination. It's basically something that we simply cannot do. But if we have the compute resources, we can unlock a lot of new opportunities. Those are often the computational problems that are like solving the existing problem from first principles. These will provide robust solutions as alternatives to current approximation methods, and it will really unlock new business opportunities. And also, those are the ones that are currently intractable with classical computational models. Going to the question of the 4 milestones, I would say from the hardware perspective, I think I don't have a lot of expertise in commenting on that, but I would say from the algorithm side, there's still a lot of gap between whatever the current quantum algorithm can offer and what is needed from the actual real world financial applications. And so I would say that this is something that we really need to work hard, and also often neglected by the community, and also even researchers and active industry practitioners in this field. And in terms of the integration with current IT infrastructure, as I said, that is something that's further down the line. So I would say that the other milestones will have to be achieved in order to make that one relevant. Yeah, hope that answers your question.
I say a few things, if you don't mind, on this topic.
Yeah, and then we'll go to Danica after. Is that okay, Danica?
Oh, I don't want to undercut Danica.
No. She raised her. No, but please go ahead. Go ahead.
So there's one topic we really haven't talked about, which is sometimes called quantum-inspired algorithms, meaning that we're still doing everything classical, but we are taking sort of a mindset of quantum computing. And a very good example of this that is some of my recent work, and it addresses the question that most of the financial mathematics that sort of has been developed since the 80s and 90s is continuous time diffusions. It's kind of the basis for derivative pricing. It's the basis for portfolio, some arguments in portfolio optimization, etc. If you think of these things don't really work very well on a quantum computer, thinking about a continuous time diffusion and simulating that. But if you change your mind and think about it as a hidden Markov model of discrete states, then you're actually, there is a quantum version of that, of quantum hidden Markov models. And these things, even classically, with just a few discrete states for the hidden volatility process, if you are thinking about a stochastic volatility model, although it looks very simple, it's only two diffusions, is a very hard model to actually look at, simulate, and deal with. But if you just have a discrete number of states for the hidden states, and there's a classical version of that, and there is also an easy transition to a quantum hidden Markov model, you realize that these quantum-inspired algorithms are actually providing new insights, potentially, in notably also distributions, which Joe was talking about, and conditional distributions on scenarios. And then you're kind of already in a mindset for doing the quantum algorithm, because the framework is one that is inspired by quantum. So I think that that's an area where there's a lot of, I think, potential for progress.
Yeah, thank you for that. I completely agree. I wanted us to touch upon quantum inspired. I know Helmut also has a comment now, but maybe we'll go to Danica, and then we'll go. I'll come back to this topic, and I think it's related to the next question anyway. So we're just gonna combine everything. Yeah, go ahead, Danica.
Sure. I was just going to refer to there was a recent Financial Times article about how in economics, the math is wrong. And so potentially the way that we even handle and model economics could be enhanced, especially in cases where, human decision-making is involved. Could be enhanced so for example, there's a branch, I believe, of economics called econophysics, which may be making use of techniques more like statistical mechanics. And so maybe if we start kind of pushing in those kinds of directions, we'll discover new ways that quantum computers, which could potentially access different kinds of distributions, might be able to, aid in techniques that we haven't even thought of, or, we're trying to apply quantum computers to the ways that we currently model things, but maybe that's actually not like the right way to go about it.
Yeah. Essentially, I think it's related to what Joe said, and what, I think a lot of people have encountered is like when sometimes we're trying to fit a specific algorithm and make a quantum version of it and find a speed up, but there may be benefit to like rethinking how we formulate the problem in the first place. And sometimes doing that, as we've seen, gives you a better classical solution right now before we even have a large quantum computer. Helmut, did you want to chime in as well on this topic, or quantum inspired in general?
Yeah, I regret the day that I allowed Microsoft marketing to use that word. A lot of the work that I did before I switched to Microsoft was exactly on what is known now today as quantum inspired. And so what you said is absolutely true, Eric. Looking at some of the problems through a different lens often unlocks solutions that previously were not thought of. And I blame physicists being one of them, because they like to focus on their own domain and don't like to look over the fence and see where else these methods could find a lot of value. And I can give you a couple of examples that my team in the past worked on, where really the use of these quantum-inspired methods unlocked some new interesting approaches. So one of them is, looking at fraud. Basically, instead of looking at tabular data, look at it as a set of transactions living on a graph. And then you map that onto what is known as a Potts Hamiltonian. You all don't need to understand what this is. But basically, you can then run any type of optimizer to find the optimum for that. And that gives you then the different clustering of the different data sets. And if you have outliers, then they might be fraudulent. Now, you cannot really do this at scale with a quantum device, but you can use graph neural networks. And so with distributed training, we can look at data sets of billions of variables. But without that physics insight, we would have never been able to solve the problem. And the other one that is close to what Eric said that I'm really fascinated about is some of you might have heard the term tensor networks. It's a computational approach used in physics to simulate high-dimensional quantum systems. Now, when you look at options, they're nothing else than stochastic differential equations. And it so happens, and this is work that two of the chaps that I worked with, you can actually approximate quite well the options pricing equation using tensor networks. You get, at least for the easiest one, say American European options, about 1 million-fold speed up over Monte Carlo approaches. But the neat thing is that you can also get all the Greeks with one simulation. So instead of having to compute things over and over, you do one calculation and you have all the data that you wanted. Now, what's the issue here for adoption? Well, these tensor networks are highly complex. And so I encourage banks to hire more physicists that come from that neck of the wood, because we tested it with a bunch of products that banks usually offer, and it works really, really well for most of them, not all. So again, take something from physics, apply it in finance, and you can get some really cool results.
Oh, that's great. We're going to stay on the same topic, but does anyone else want to chime in?
Can I add something to what Danica said? It might be worth reminding ourselves that the foundations of probability theory in quantum are different from what we sort of use in most of the financial mathematics, meaning what is sometimes called Kolmogorovian or Kolmogorov-based probability theory versus quantum or von Neumann-based operator theoretic foundations. Now, why do I mention that? Is that the reason is that when you compute expectation values in the quantum world, you get this quantum interference term that is not present in classical expectations. And that has been used by notably people in mathematical psychology to model behavior under uncertainty, solving sort of Ellsberg's paradox, which is decisions when you don't know the true distribution of probability of outcomes. And so this is an area where you sort of have possibilities that are offered by quantum computational arguments that are relatively unexplored yet. And I think that kind of relates to some of the arguments that Danica was making about connections with behavioral science.
Yeah, thank you. I think, I'm going to go on to a related question on, given that there's no kind of quantum advantage for a specific financial application today, what are some wins that companies can have if they choose to work on quantum computing? We've alluded to this, I think, in this whole question around quantum-inspired reformulating. And then, given that, what should they be focusing on? Like how, if you have a new financial institution that wants to invest in quantum computing internally today, like what would you recommend they focus on? Maybe I'll ask Yue, and then we'll go to Joe, and then anyone else who wants to chime in.
Sure. Yeah. Like everyone mentioned here, definitely experimenting with the quantum-inspired or physics-informed algorithms can lead to some short-term practical improvements even before the true quantum hardware is available. And also exploring studying the problem itself, and will help push both the classical and quantum state of the art, and that will make sure that we have a very more fair comparison or benchmarking when we're comparing the state of the art quantum with the classical, and it will benefit either or both quantum and classical, and either way it's going to be win for the entire community, and including the industry. And also for companies right now, we can pursue also in the talent building and the infrastructure building area. Basically, for talent building, it's going to be building multidisciplinary teams that includes people from technical background, like in quantum computing, and also risk analysis and compliance and so on, so that the company will get ready for when the true technology will come in one day. And also I know we mentioned about the integration of the quantum solutions. So with existing systems, I guess here with the mind of having quantum-inspired algorithms, we can also think of ways to integrate those quantum-inspired solutions with existing systems and ensure that we can rapidly move to more advanced quantum algorithms in the future as the technology matures. Yeah, I think I'll stop here.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think we'll go over to Joe. I mean, obviously, you made the decision to investigate quantum today. So, what would you suggest kind of companies focus on?
Well, this question about regional and smaller lenders, as you had put to me, the reason I, as essentially a vendor, looked into this is because I don't think they will. It's the regional and smaller lenders on new technology typically do look to vendors to come up with solutions that they can deploy. It's the larger banks, I think, are going to do the core applications research. And I expect, as I said before, I expect the trading desk, some of the largest lenders, to be the ones that lead because of problems that can be solved. Basically, I don't have to elaborate, that's been brought up. So yeah, I think the regional and small bank budgets right now are being put entirely into generative AI. That's we can have a separate conversation about hype cycles and so forth there. But I'll just say that's what's filling the space at the moment. And when the solutions are ready, I expect vendors to lead for that group.
Thank you. Yeah, so I think that this is a great point to move on to kind of the last section, which is thinking about the potential impact on banking, supervision, and regulation. Since you mentioned AI, though, and there was a question in the audience earlier about it, Gushue already alluded or answered part of it, but maybe we'll just kind of very quickly, Gushue, you can chime in on, do you see quantum computing being useful for AI kind of in the future even? Do you think that hybrid systems will actually impact AI in any way? Or and then of course you've already answered that, you have students today using machine learning for quantum computing, but maybe we'll just kind of conclude this section just to talk about quantum and AI a little bit more, and then we'll move on. We'll kind of go back to Joe's point about banking.
Okay, so let's talk about like the quantum for AI. Previously, I was mentioning like my students are doing AI for quantum, but now let's talk about AI for like quantum for AI. Mm-hmm. Generally, I would put all existing like a quantum for AI into two categories. The first one is the near term, like a hybrid, like a version of quantum approaches, where you mostly use like quantum computer, like you as a neural network, and you change some parameters in your program and try to like minimize or maximize the expectation of some observables. So that's the one way of using quantum for AI. There are, to me, like there are a bunch of like challenges for this, or maybe this is like a hyped because there are theoretical research is showing that there are a bunch of challenges here. Like there are barrier plateaus, there are like measurement, also like measuring the observable is also becoming challenging as the number of qubits increases, and how to design the neural network architecture, the quantum neural network architecture is still not clear. And also like basically the objective function of a quantum neural network has a lot of not very good properties, so that just like we can do SGDs for classical neural networks to have good results, but for quantum, we don't have that, at least to the best of my knowledge. Here, the second type of like quantum for AI is a little bit like a more long-term, where like you have fault-tolerant quantum computing, and you do quantum versions of some classical machine learning algorithms like quantum PCA, quantum SVM, quantum that kind of things. For that kind of algorithms, there is usually the key bottleneck is how do we encode our data set onto a quantum computer, and that usually becomes the bottleneck of that types of algorithms. So for me personally, I don't want to say I'm very pessimistic or optimistic about like quantum for AI, but I would like to wait and see like what are the like theoretical advantage we can see it before we move towards that direction.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. Like you said about it, well, ultimately the way I think about it is classical computers and GPUs have gotten so good that it's a pretty, especially on this in this specific area, it's a pretty high bar to overcome. And if all we're doing is we're doing the same exact calculation on a quantum computer and hoping that we have a complexity speed up, then we better make a really, 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 really big quantum computer that can still process the data. And so we have better solved the data loading problem. And that seems to be far away. So I mean, again, I think it's useful to do research in this area, but I think it's good to understand that like we shouldn't expect quantum versions of machine learning algorithms to be, or like quantum training of neural networks to outperform anytime soon. That being said, I'm all for having like research done in this area, but
yes.
And
there's like one
thing
you can add is especially for quantum for AI. That is, when your native data is quantum, for example, your data from your quantum sensors, then the quantum machine learning may becomes a better solution than classical machine learning, because you just avoid the overhead of like sampling, transforming from the data from quantum sensors to classical data, and then feeding your classical machine learning models. You can directly go to your quantum processing unit. That is something I think is still being actively researched, but at least seems to be like a more reasonable, like a approach more makes sense to me by feeding classical data into quantum machine learning.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Google has a few papers, or the Google quantum parts of the Google quantum team have a few papers on this topic that I think are quite interesting for sure. Okay, so in the spirit of time, maybe we'll focus more on like kind of the impact of supervision and banking and whatnot. Maybe I'll ask. I'll start with Danica. What should financial regulators be doing now to prepare for the quantum era? What's urgent and what can wait? What are the most important steps over the next couple of years?
I mean, I'd say the most urgent thing right now, just because of that we know that there's this possibility of a quantum algorithm breaking encryption and the consequence of that on the financial system. I recently co-authored a paper with the Bank of International Settlements on this topic of quantum resilience. So starting to inventory your encryption, and this is more in the domain of cybersecurity, but talking to your vendors, ensuring that you're sort of shored up in that area, and any investment now I think is well spent. And then after that, upskilling at large, I think, to understand the potential impacts on financial system infrastructure due to quantum technologies. So aside from just what we've talked about briefly earlier, potentially quantum enhanced, say, algorithmic trading or something like that, I think actually the quantum sensors and the quantum communications, which are much more mature technologies, will be impacting the infrastructure. So think of like how high frequency trading affected financial markets, that kind of thing. So quantum sensors and quantum communications might come into play in those areas.
Yeah, thank you. Relatedly, Eric, do you have any thoughts also on the question on like how banks, either larger or smaller, should be thinking about the technology?
Quantum safe encryption is kind of the I think Danica was kind of alluding to as well. it's clear that the larger banks are quantum ready in terms of encryption, or they're getting ready. I mean, I don't know. I've heard a number like maybe between 70 and 90% of the major banks around the world are sort of aware of and getting kind of ready for it. But I'm not sure that that's true. That's certainly not true for a lot of the smaller banks. And the question is, how much time will it take for these smaller players to be kind of transit to quantum safe cryptography and the like, and be sort of prepared for that? That's an open question. I'm not enough in tune with the small banks sort of situation, but as a regulator, I would be concerned about that.
Yeah. Thank you. And then I'll ask both Helmut and Yue, what's an action that a bank should take, this year or next year that could be beneficial, even if quantum computing or quantum advantage for their particular use cases, it doesn't arrive in the even for 10 years or more.
I can go first, but
sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So I think the most important part, which touched on the previous question, is become quantum secure. If you run, for example, your banking databases on AWS, everything is already on quantum secure protocols. So it's spreading out more and more. But I would say, develop a kind of to-do list of potential risks that you might face. What would happen if, work closely with experts in the field, not necessarily with corporates, but really with people that have looked at some of these problems for a long time, and make sure you keep informed. I think that's the most important thing that companies should do today. Keep in the know, make sure you know what is coming at you, and prepare for that.
Makes sense. Yue?
Yeah, so I think most of the things probably have been mentioned before, but I'll just reiterate and summarize a little bit. I think firstly, as Helmut mentioned, that there's this education piece. This is basically education and workforce development around quantum technologies and building internal expertise and keeping an eye on the industry progress. And this will make sure that the organization be prepared to evaluate and adopt the quantum solutions whenever they become more practical, even if this is a decade away, say. And also, the second point is that I think organizations should bring together teams or people with different expertise across quantum computing, algorithm and hardware, and also with business insights like, for example, risk analysis and portfolio optimization and whatever business applications and that can benefit from quantum computing, and also compliance experts and to handle all of these compliance issues. So this is to make sure that everyone is on the same page, so that there will be no surprise in the catches whenever the day comes when we have to integrate quantum solutions into the current infrastructure. And also, I think it's helpful to build partnerships across the industry and the academia, and also potential vendors to establish some standardized benchmarks to evaluate the performance of quantum and quantum-inspired, and also the traditional classical techniques in an objective way, so that we can stay up to date with the state-of-the-art quantum and classical solutions. And when the technology becomes more mature, we can make sure that we have an unbiased knowledge and implementation of the and also assessment of the performance of these different solutions. And I think these are basically three aspects: education and team building, and also the partnership for standardized benchmarking will eventually pay off and ensure the company is prepared for the future.
Fabio, if I could add.
Yeah, thank you. I was going to ask.
Okay.
Go ahead.
The encryption risk, making sure people are prepared for the ability to break that with quantum computing is obviously an important first step. I think as a board member and those kinds of roles, I'll be focused on the broader use of quantum computing in fraud. And I think, until we have actual computers that are accessible, that's not a risk, of course, but I expect them to start thinking about it and developing algorithms well in advance of getting their hands on the machines. And that's where, as usual, those interested in committing fraud are probably going to be ahead of the banks, who will put that concern off as long as possible. So for someone interested in risk management, I want to be paying attention to what algorithms, what ideas are coming out of the fraud community that we're aware of. Because I don't know yet, but I expect there will be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So to that point, yeah. Okay. Go ahead, Eric. I'll also just chime in if you want to chime in on anything about other systemic risks beyond the encryption side related to, I think, Joe's point, for things that we haven't been able to discuss yet.
Yeah, I mean, you talked about the banking sector, which is heavily regulated, but there is a significant shadow banking system, and there is also the expanding decentralized finance platforms that are blockchain based. It's not so clear to me how these protocols that live on all these blockchain ecosystems, how they gonna transit to quantum safe encryptions and quantum safe computations and implementations. These are automated systems that for which there is no regulation at this point, and I think they are becoming a serious part of the financial system, and I think that's another discussion that needs to take place at some point. But it's beyond quantum. It's the world of decentralized finance.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Yeah, and maybe we'll have more of these panels in the future, and we can kind of focus on some specific topics. In the spirit of time, and obviously we won't be able to get through all the questions, including audience questions, but instead, I'll just we'll just close. I'll just give every one of you an opportunity to kind of leave the audience with one takeaway about quantum computing, especially as related to banking and finance, but it doesn't have to be. It could be, if you just want to give one message about it, and then then we'll close, I think, because we won't have too much more time. But maybe I'll start with Guushu this time.
Okay. Yes. Thanks. So I will not maybe comment too much on finance because that's sort of outside my expertise, but I do want to maybe leave one takeaway message on quantum. So another common under a misunderstanding on quantum is that we usually say, okay, you don't need quantum mechanics or learn a lot to get into this area. We say this to try to attract people into this area, but if you do really want to understand something, there's some lessons you need to learn, some effort you need to put before, because it's kind of still counterintuitive if you don't have any sense about quantum before. So that's the as a faculty member, that's something I would say. Yeah, thanks.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. I guess to that point, maybe I'll be able to answer a question from the audience around solving certain problems in linear time that might take polynomial time or exponential time, specifically NP-hard problems. I think that's a comment. We won't have time to address it fully, but I will say, just to answer the question, that it's not quantum computers are not able to solve arbitrary NP-hard problems in linear time. I think, unless I don't think anyone in the panel will disagree with that, but Of course, for very specific problems that like factoring, Shor's algorithm has that exponential advantage, but broadly speaking, that's not the case. Oh, so we can answer that audience question, but okay, sorry about that. But now we'll go back into kind of the closing. Maybe Yue, any closing thoughts on or takeaways from today for the audience?
Yeah, sure. And maybe I'll bring it back to more of the positive side. I think I do believe that quantum computing still represents a paradigm shift in computational capability. But with that said, its impact will likely be gradual and, as I mentioned earlier, problem specific. And I think the best way for financial institutions to get prepared for this is to really stay engaged, which means to invest in research, talent, and also collaborate with others. Taking these steps will ensure our organizations are prepared and ready to make the most of the quantum computing and also related quantum-inspired technologies as the technology continues to evolve.
Yeah, thank you. Helmut?
I can only second everything what was said. I would just caution everybody to not believe everything you read in the press, and stay in the know, consult with seasoned leaders, and collaborate. If you're a smaller bank, collaborate with the larger institutions, collaborate with some of the quantum computing teams out there. But yeah, don't believe the press. That's probably my main takeaway.
Thank you. Joe, maybe?
Oh, I think I've a bit along the lines of what Gucci was saying, that as I ran experiments and looked at how to do things, it all seemed pretty far from what I would expect one of my programmers to be doing. We're not at a point where the problem is, how to say, that anybody can write code, but it's not going to be obvious to somebody who doesn't understand quantum computing what to do with it. Perhaps just that we're still at the algorithm research phase, as opposed to having what programmers expect is an API that they can say, here's my problem, here's the function, and run some code to do that. In a few limited cases, if we had the hardware, we could, but I wouldn't say this is ready to just turn loose on generic programmers.
Thank you. Danik?
Okay, I'll flip it. Okay, so much as that being said, much as we found for AI, ultimately, I don't think you can completely ignore quantum. I do think in some way, shape, or form, be it quantum sensors that might be used to prevent fraudulent currency in the future, or quantum communications being used to protect networks, it is going to touch our lives. It's not going away. And if nothing else, it's helping us to think in different ways, to break us out of mental ruts, and will likely inspire new progress in ways that we didn't anticipate.
Thank you. Eric?
Since I'm the finance professor on this panel, maybe I can conclude by saying that if you had some AI-related stocks like NVIDIA in your retirement portfolio, you would be you are very happy about the returns that you've seen on your investment. I would also suggest that you include some quantum-related stocks, but I'm not going to tell you which ones. That's a private conversation. Thank you.
Okay, I guess we'll leave that up to the audience to do their own research and make their own picks then. Okay, yeah, thank you very much to everyone on the panel. I think it was very informative. I hope that the audience enjoyed it as well. Like I said, we'll maybe try to have this happen again. I don't know if it's a yearly thing, every other year. But certainly, I think the conversation will evolve over the next few years, like we've heard on all the progress that's happening. So thank you again.